So we um, found that we had three things to really focus on for our students. So there's a lack of knowledge about other resources. So we had to figure out how to address that, improving the quality of food. There were complaints about expired cans, which if you've worked with the food banks and food pantries, there's certain years that you can go past. Each food has an expiration date besides their expiration date that's a little bit further out. But students still did have issues with that. So we heard them out on that. And then also catering to student specific needs. So can openers, if they have running water, if they even have access to a stove, taking things like that into consideration with our future steps on increasing access in the food pantry. So Kinsey created this beautiful little word cloud that really showed that fresh fruits and vegetables, healthy options were what students were looking for. So our questions were, how do we reach more students about possible assistance? How can we help students in different demographics equitably? How can we teach about the food pantry being a supplemental source for food? What other campus resources can we utilize? How do we get fresh produce on campus before our pantry is completed? And then how can we make students feel more comfortable about receiving the assistance? So we started brainstorming. And our first idea, we borrowed from Utah State of food cleaning. We loved the idea of gathering produce from the community. We loved the idea of getting students involved in helping to gather it. The idea of a third of the produce going to the owner, a third going to the volunteers, and a third going to benefit the pantry. So we reached out to different gardening groups, Utah County gardening groups on social media. And Kinsey received quite the backlash of people questioning why they would ever give up their produce. Like they grew it for a reason. So with that being the response from multiple groups, we needed a plan B. Luckily, we have been partnered with Community Action Services and Food Bank since our inception. So we had the idea of how do we bring a farmer's market to campus? And also, how do we make this happen with the limited capacity that we have? So we met with Community Action, talked to them about how willing they would be to help provide us with the produce to provide that outreach and provide that access for students. And they were super on board. It was not a hard argument, which was awesome. So we were able to hire a student employee to assist with that, which he's actually the one pictured in this photo. Very grateful to have him on our team. And then we tried to figure out what is the best capacity for us, since we were now a staff of 3, trying to make this farmers market happen. And how do we make sure that we are providing access to students without overburdening Community Action, since they serve the entire county and not just our institution. And so we decided that Fresh Food Fridays would happen every other week. So 2 to 3 times a month, starting in the summer, so in June. And as we were thinking about what we needed, what we wanted to accomplish with this, we really wanted to make sure that we were removing as many barriers as possible so that students just had access to fresh food. Again, trying to remove that stigma about accessing resources and trying to remove hoops to make them jump through. So since we can look up demographic information, majors, everything like that, just with knowing a student's UVID, we made our requirements that they had to tell us the UVID number and that we had to weigh the produce before they left. And so it's been incredible to have students come up to us and ask, like, what is this? Let them know, and then ask, like, wait, it's for free? Like, what do you need to know? Because of course there's that issue, like nothing's really free. but letting them know of like, no, 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 like we swear, we just need you to tell us your UVID number and we need to weigh the produce at the end. Students are always surprised, but then excited. It's like, oh, like this really is a resource for us with like no strings. So that's been fun to watch. And we weigh the produce because, as you'll see a little bit later, we weigh what we take from community action. And so we're able to see how much we've taken and how much we've given away, which is beneficial for us. It shows our need, but it's also beneficial for community action. So definitely something that we recommend. With that, I want to talk about the structure and give you a little bit of our timeline of how it works every Friday. So we leave for the food bank around 11. We're able to go and we pick out all the produce that we want. They have it lined up at the front of the food bank and then back behind where the garage doors are. So we go through with a cart and a bunch of banana boxes and just take whatever looks the freshest, whatever we think we can get that students want. And we definitely take recommendations from students and previous weeks. And then we have them weigh the produce, return to campus. We normally then unload and set up this. We are in the demo kitchen in the Student Life and Wellness building. And so it's on the first floor. It's a pretty central part of campus. We set it up in an L shape so that students are first greeted with the rules of please only take what you need or want, but be mindful of other students. Please use hand sanitizer when you're grabbing the fruits and vegetables. We provide produce bags. We provided produce bags over the summer. We weren't able to maintain that just because they are expensive, but we have asked students to always bring them back. And we do have students who bring them back every time that we do Fresh Fruit Friday, which is a delight. So we set them up with bags, and then we have all of the fruits and vegetables lined up in an L. And at the end, that's when we have where we have resources. So Kinsey has been incredible at making recipe cards, either recipes of her own imagination or ones that she's looked up online, along with resources for different things on campus, along with WIC, SNAP, everything like that. And so after we set up, we do ask, and this has been from a tip from students, but we ask that any student that has class at 1 o'clock that they come to the front and they can go through first, just to make sure that they are able to access the food. And we do this because some weeks we've run out in less than 45 minutes. And other weeks we've had extras that we've had to give away after 3 p.m. So we can't, since we can't guarantee that food will be there when their classes are done, it's easier to just give them a few minutes beforehand so that they are able to go through and get what they need. So with that, I told you about the produce, the recipe cards, the pamphlets that we have. Let's chat about results. So this has been super exciting. This is all of the information that we've gathered over the course of the last almost 6 months, or yeah, to the day. So we started out only grabbing in the 200s for food and have substantially grown. And we've seen a great turnout. So we've grabbed over 4,000 pounds of food from community action and been able to give away 3,300 pounds of food to students. We've had over 550 students attend Fresh Food Friday, and 288 of them have been unique users, which I think is incredible for the fact that this is a program that we started in the middle of summer while a pandemic was still going on. but being able to reach almost 300 students to provide them with access to vegetables that they wouldn't normally have has been awesome. We get a lot of feedback while while students are in line, while they're having their produce weighed, thanking us for this resource, thanking us for for providing them with something that they wouldn't be able to normally afford. We have a lot of our Fresh Food Fridays attendees are, along with our food pantry demographics, are young single students, young families, and actually a lot of international students as well. So it's been interesting to see those demographics and to see how that's impacting our students. We know the data and the research that healthy food and having access to food promotes student health and success, and definitely helps them to succeed and stay in school. And so with that, I have lots of things that we've learned. And so first, advertising is key. Make sure that you have it cross-promoted on as many social media accounts as you can possibly have. So UVU has a CARE Instagram, we have the Center for Social Impact Instagram, but we ask that our student association shares it, our BSU, our African diaspora, multicultural, as many departments as you can get to share your event, which that's a pretty normal thing, but is the best. We also learned that you have to be prepared for bad produce days, since we get to go and pick out all of the produce ourselves. You have to definitely be aware of what you're grabbing. When we first started out, we had to end up throwing away a lot of rotten produce, which is why when you look back here, like on our first day, we received 261 pounds of food, but only 215 were taken, because as we were taking it out of the banana boxes, taking it out of the different boxes and cartridges that we had, and June 18th is another perfect example of that. We had strawberries with mold on it. We had avocados that were far too mushy. So we ended up not having as much produce for students because we had not checked as well. So that definitely led us to checking better for the future. But that doesn't mean that there weren't some days where we still only walked away with 200 pounds of food, just because of what community action had available. So again, definitely make sure that you're checking your produce and be prepared for days where you aren't able to get as much as you need. With that, definitely have a backup plan for leftovers and a way to announce it to people. So for us, on the days that we have not gone through everything in 45 minutes, half an hour, those moments, an hour in, I send a message on Teams to the student life supervisor group and the student leader group, just letting them know that if you have any students in your office, please let them know that this opportunity is happening right now and they can come down and grab something. And then after half an hour, if we still have things left, I'd say 45 minutes, at like 2:45, I will then allow staff to come down and grab whatever produce they would like. Our focus for this entire program is to make sure that students are the ones receiving the food first, but we also are very much against waste. And I am also slightly against driving back down to Provo if I don't have to. So we definitely want to make sure that we're getting as much of the food taken and being eaten by people as we possibly can. During this time, I also make sure that our student employee and our Vista are able to go through if they'd like and grab whatever they need, if we have access. And then in regards to location, definitely choose somewhere centralized or like localized and where there is a lot of traffic. But I will also say our demo kitchen, there are multiple rows of tables set up for students to eat. It's right next to our Wendy's. People like to gather there to play games. And we sometimes struggle with our event services staff not setting up the tables for us. And so then as we are trying to load and set everything up in our limited hour window, we have to like awkwardly like move around all the people who are eating lunch or playing D&D or whatever they're doing, which can be frustrating and a little loud. So if you are looking to do Fresh Food Fridays in an area that is like a kind of hangout spot, definitely make sure that your event services or whoever's setting up the tables for you does it earlier in the day, that they actually do it, any of that, just so that one of the things that you are not trying to balance while organizing everything else and while setting up the scale and the resources is awkwardly trying to move tables, but like keep other people at their tables and not make them feel bad or having to move. Just avoid it if you can. It'll be better. But yeah, so talking about a little bit of what's next, as I said before, our food pantry, our center is under construction and including our food pantry, and that should hopefully be done in mid-January. We all know construction, but that is the hope. And so with that, we are hoping to have the food pantry up and running by the end of January, early February. And at that time, we will have a fridge and a freezer in there, along with an ability to, and more room to hold produce. And so with that, we will have 3 ways that students can access the food pantry. They are either going to be able to come in and shop in person and grab whatever they need. They'll be able to place a food order to pick up, or we have a new partnership with United Way of Utah County and DoorDash, where students will actually be able to submit a food order and have DoorDash deliver it to them a few days later. Super cool partnership. Very excited about that happening and the access that provides to students who live within 10 miles of UVU. But with that, our goal is that Fresh Food Friday will no longer be needed, since we'll have fresh produce in the food pantry all the time. And so our current idea for the procedures is that we will continue having Fresh Food Fridays twice in January. And then we will be hiring another student employee just to help with maintaining, stocking, doing all of the food safety checks that we need to. But that we will be able to, sorry, lost my train of thought. That we'll be able to stock fresh produce on Tuesdays or on Wednesdays, since that's when, we're stock produce on Wednesdays because Tuesday is when Community Action receives most of their produce. So on Wednesdays, weekly, we will have an employee go over, grab fresh produce, stock the pantry. And so students will now weekly be able to grab what they need. And it'll be interesting to see how our demographics shift and if there's an increase in food pantry usage, because the Fresh Food Fridays is such a open event. And I think that really has caused it to be destigmatized. So it'll be interesting to see if that stigma stays gone or if it will come back with students having to sign or use the food pantry in order to access the produce. So that's definitely something that we are interested in learning. And with that, let's go into questions. Does anyone have any questions?
I do, because that's what you just barely addressed it on your last thought there, but because it's in such a public place, I wonder when people wander up and they say, well, what's this for? Can you say what is the line that you give them? Or like, I'm just wondering, what is the message that you say right there in person?
Yeah, so we're just like, oh, this is Fresh Food Fridays. It's a free farmers market for students, or like it's free produce for students. So that's, yeah, we've actually had random dignitaries, it's a campus, so dignitaries just randomly will wander around sometimes, who've like stopped and are looking for, I think we had a campus VP from Nigeria stop by, and he was getting a tour from another staff member, stopped by to like learn about it, and raved about how like, oh, I'm trying to start a free breakfast for college students on my campus, because we know that they don't have access to food. So like, this is awesome. Can you like tell us more? And then unfortunately we had to get recorded, which is great. But as someone who doesn't get ready on Fridays because I know I'm going to the food pantry to lift, or the food bank to lift like 500 pounds of produce, I don't want to put in that effort. So, but yeah, it's normally just as simple as possible. Like, it's free produce for students. Like, we just need your UVID and to wait at the end. We have free bags. Like, we have bags over there. Take whatever you need. So,
yeah, that was my question, was like, so you don't bring like anything like this is part of the pantry, or this is for, UVU students who have difficulty getting produce or anything, like you don't bring that into the conversation for this project?
We will say that we're with the food pantry, or like we're with the Center for Social Impact. So I guess that's true. But yeah, our big thing is like, it's free produce. Like, that's the big takeaway. So that could be also part of why it doesn't seem as stigmatized.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Cool. Thank you.
Yeah. Other questions?
One of the things that came up for me, so Mike from Salt Lake Community College, one of the things that came up for me was you were talking about how oftentimes you got like a little bit of pushback from folks when they saw that like cans were out of date, or, food was not necessarily maybe like the highest quality, or had like some visual issues. And that's something that we've faced a lot with our pantries. I'm curious, like, how you think about messaging around food that maybe has been recovered, or I think that like it's been really, really positive to see over the last couple of years. There's like the growth of organizations like Imperfect Foods or Misfits Market, or folks are a lot more aware of waste in the food system. And so like we've been trying to message more around like, the best by date on the package is something that the manufacturer puts on there so that sometimes potentially so that they can sell more food. And it doesn't necessarily mean that like Cinderella, like at midnight it turns into garbage. Like, how do you think around messaging like that? Because that's like a real challenge for us as well, to try to like get folks to understand that the food isn't necessarily bad just because of there's a tear in the box or whatever. But it's the same with produce for us too, because we do a lot of food recovery with the Utah Food Bank. And how do you think about like communicating that to folks so that they don't feel as nervous or apprehensive about taking food that's not pristine and within date?
Yeah, that's a great question, and definitely something that we are still trying to figure out. In the pantry, when people could still like walk through it, we have plenty of posters that talk about expiration dates and like what you should actually look for. So we do have that kind of like awareness thing happening. But with the fresh produce And like, for example, salad bags, I think are a great example. Just making sure students know that like, hey, just be like, it's always important to, this is how you check that your veggies are fresh or like still safe to eat. So Kinsey has made this cute little poster for while you're waiting to weigh your food to read through of like, this is how like you can tell if your produce is still good. She also has one on how to properly wash your fruits and vegetables, which I think was also a genius idea. But yeah, so I think just it is hard. It's so rough. And I don't know, I feel like with us for the produce, we haven't really seen an issue with it, but that could just be because when I'm looking at it, community action, when we're going through the food, there's a lot of like bags of cuties where like 3 of the oranges are so moldy that when you put it back down, like dust comes off of it, or like spores come off of it. So like, I think I'm so hyper aware of avoiding those and making sure that we're not grabbing any of those, that the bags I just don't even think about. Or I tell people just like, okay, make sure you eat it today. So sorry, I feel like that did not answer your question. I have no.
No, that's a great answer,
revelation.
right? I think it's like, you're right, like having the proper signage or the proper educational materials like in the space can go a long way. I think one of the things that we've noticed at Slick is that oftentimes folks are more likely to accept help, and they it's internally kind of battles some of that stigma if they also recognize that they're preventing food from going into landfills. And so that can be a way of like undermining stigma, is saying like, you know what, like 30 to 40% of the food that's produced in the US like ends up in the landfills or is wasted. Like we're not just supporting students who may be food insecure, but we're also like preventing food waste. And so that can be a like kind of a workaround to make folks, recognize that there's lots of reasons for a food pantry to be kind of like a functional part of the campus ecosystem.
I love that. That's a great way to look at that. We will be borrowing that.
Please do. Yeah,
Okay.
it's good. Because oftentimes people are like, oh, I don't know if I really need it. It's like, well, if you don't take it, like it's going to be trash or whatever. And they're like, oh, okay, I guess I do need it.
Yeah. And that actually reminds me of something else just with our food pantry that over the past few years is a campaign that our director and I started to also try to erase that stigma of being a supplemental resource, especially with the fact that we can only do boxed and canned goods right now. Like you cannot get your entire like caloric needs or whatever from us. And so one of the campaigns that we have that goes on every single year, all semester, we have these digital signage things that go around campus of if you have a flat tire and you need food, pay for your flat tire, get food from us for 2 weeks. If you have a doctor's appointment, mortgage, rent, textbooks. So we have these 8 different like emergency needs that can come up in a student's life. And we have those of like, pay for this, like pay for the doctor, come visit us, like let us help you out that way. And I think that has also really helped to change the outlook for students who are just like, I'm not that poor, like I'm not that starving. Just like, no, if you are hungry at all, please come to us. Like if you need any kind of assistance, we have students who will request almost everything on the order form, and we have students who request 5 items, and both are fair. If you only want to use us for free pads and tampons, cool, like please do. So that's definitely something that we are trying to work on too. But
is that messaging something that you'd be willing to share? Like if I put my email in the chat, just so that we can kind of like take a look. I'm always interested to see what kind of like graphics or ad copy or promotional materials folks use.
For sure.
Cool. I'll put my email in the chat if you don't mind sending some of those slogans our way. Because yeah, I think it's a lot of the time it has to do with informing folks that like these aren't necessarily fixed identities. It's not like there are people who are hungry or experiencing food insecurity and they are different than everybody else. Like folks move in and out of these categories. Like you may identify as being food insecure one week, and then you're a little bit more stable the following week. And so that's something that we find really, really helpful on campus, is like acknowledging that things happen with jobs and housing and childcare and all of these other things, and folks may need help sometimes and not all the time.
Yeah, and I think one other thing that we implemented a few years ago that we still continue, we offer food vouchers for students on campus. So students are able to access or to get 3 food vouchers per semester. And so they're $10 each, and they actually come in 2 $5 vouchers so that they can choose to either use them together or separately. And we think that that's really helped as well, because we have the 3 limit, but we don't check for anything besides their UVID and if they've used their 3. So we advertise that as like, if you need a hot meal because you haven't had one, or if you forget your wallet on like one day, like it is for situational poverty of like, today I'm very broke because I have no money on me, to generational poverty and like having it be a continued need. So we definitely are always looking for ways to continue improving access for our students and destigmatizing food insecurity. But other questions, y'all? We have about 7 minutes.
I've got an idea, but I want to like have someone else ask a question if they want to. Okay. Okay. No one's speaking up. So back to Mike and your the idea of like, how do we get word out about this, the Best By dates and all that stuff. It reminded me of some things like we've been in this work for so long that I feel like we just have like all these ideas that I needed to be reminded. But one of the things that I thought about is like having a taste testing event where you have like a can like a year past the Best By date, and then a can that's like not, and then can people even can they even taste the difference, and then a prize for someone who can, or just to show that there's not really anything to be afraid of. But then like I've seen, I think, articles about like ugly produce campaigns, which I think we could probably like localize and personalize to our campuses. And I'm thinking of that guy. I don't know, I don't do TikTok, but I've seen it like on Facebook, where the one guy who's like watches the videos and he's like, and then he does like that smirk where he's like, and then he does it like the easy way, or he's like, what's that person even do? But like have like it's bruised fruit, and then there's like cut off the bruise, and then we've got this like, and then you can use it to cook, or you can, those kinds of things where maybe those are to show. And because we've talked about it, and I think it's on like the landing page for our online order form is like a Best By date is not an expiration date, but maybe to say what you can do, like just to kind of take it one step further, and actually you can eat this like right now. So anyway, that's a couple of things that I remembered that wrote down actually this time, so maybe we can work on it. But it would be so cool to be able to have like this group, this food summit gathers us together, so that we could all, instead of coming up with our own campaigns, like all work on some stuff and like centralize our resources. That would be really cool to have a shared something or other folder that you can see. Anyway, cool.
Love it.
Yeah, and in the same way that there's a session about best practices for survey development and stuff, like I think having a best practices meeting around outreach and communication and stuff would also be really, really beneficial, because I know that when we have a new Vista come onto the team, or new student leaders who want to get involved, it's like the first couple of weeks or months of them getting started is always like, here's what we've done in the past, so that you're not like starting from scratch. And it would be so cool to have that cross-pollination across campuses too, because like we had student leaders who put together like informational cards on like how to use extra bread that you have, or how to get the most life out of your greens if you're getting them from the store or whatever. And I think those kinds of tips are often a little bit more helpful for folks and like broadly usable than like a recipe, which may be like very context specific. But if it's like, here's how you can get the best life out of your produce, that's like generalizable skills.
Yeah, for sure. And we originally had another student employee who was going to work for us and focus entirely on, well, mostly on marketing, and those kind of like informational things. And that did not end up working. I'm sure everyone understands what that's like. But that is definitely a goal for us in the future too, of having someone who has the capacity and the skills, because as you will see from my digital signage, I have basic skills and I can use Canva. So definitely having someone who has that skill set and who can think about those kind of like awareness campaigns will be done one day. All right, if that's it, feel free to contact me if you have any other questions. Kinsey is also a great resource who is normally in the office. She actually is our AmeriCorps Vista, but she's been offered a role here when her Vista term ends next month. So we are excited to keep her on board. Fresh Food Friday was her brainchild and her passion project. So we're stoked to be able to keep her around and keep using that awesome brain of hers. So.
All right. Well, thank you, Amber, so much. Yeah, great ideas and good conversation. And I guess everybody left except Kara. So thanks for joining us, and we'll see you in another session, hopefully. And Amber, hope to see you in person someday soon.
Soon.
All right. Okay, bye.
Bye.